This is a show about facing fear, unlocking courage, and taking action.
Courage isn't necessarily a daunting thing.
It's going to give you more purpose. It's going to give you more drive.
It feels like making a courageous decision is going to get you closer to who you aspire to be.
It's knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage.
People have to feel like they're in a safe place to go for it when they can't predict the outcome. If people are afraid to take a chance because their boss is going to come down on them and punish them, they're not going to take a chance.
I've been looking forward to this conversation because I can't imagine my guest today doesn't sleep well at night. I mean, how else can you say it? I mean, there's plenty to do, right? But when it comes down to it, when you look at the choices you've made over just the last 25 years, it's got to be like good for the soul. You know, you're giving back, you're doing good. I'm sure if I were in your shoes, my response back would be like, yes, Ryan, but there's a lot of work to be done around the globe.
Right.
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 So I get all of that. But first of all, it's good to see you again. How are things going? And I guess I should do the proper cap tip. I believe we're now officially through 2 years as the global president and CEO of Ronald McDonald House Charities.
That's right. Good tracking of time.
Okay, that was close. And like I said, 25 years in the space. You were at Feeding America before. I mean, you've done a lot of things. Okay, so we're 2 years in. I kind of like this time clock because the first year, and I'll be the one that goes there. I'm sure the first year, like it's the oh shit moment. So I'm going right. We're going right there. Like what have I stepped into? And
right.
And I'm sure there was some tinkering that needed to happen in the first year, but year two, and now moving on, how are we feeling now being in the seat?
Yeah. So just to address your first point, because I get that question a lot doing the kind of work I do over the course of my career, which is, you know, especially now working with families whose children are seriously ill or injured and are walking with their children on a journey that is life-threatening. People often ask myself and those of us who do this work, like, how do you do this, right? Like how, and I think for us, it is precisely that, like you get to be a part of a solution to a profound human need, whether it's what I do now or what I have done in food security or economic security or child abuse and neglect, an area that I worked in before. You get to be a part of helping people move through some of the greatest challenges in their life. And you're a small part, but that is hugely fulfilling, even though, you know, it comes with a lot of visibility and awareness into some really dark days for people. So there's that. And then I think, where am I at in year two? So part of what attracted me to Ronald McDonald House Charities was, number one, it may be, though I probably can't say this with certainty, one of the only true 50-year-old partnerships between a major brand, that being McDonald's, and a global public charity that McDonald's was a part of helping to create. And I frequently say this to the people who work for McDonald's. Of course, I work for the charity, but as I travel the world and talk to people who operate that business, I'm not aware of another company that helped create a global charity and has stood by that charity literally every second of every day for 50 straight years. So I was attracted to it because I thought this was a really interesting partnership. And the second reason was that I, having spent my career in the nonprofit sector, most recently with Feeding America, which is in the United States, the largest nonprofit organization in the United States, I really believe that there was so much more opportunity for the Ronald McDonald House Charities brand and its work. And 2 years in, I've discovered that that is in fact true. And we're advancing a strategic plan that's really going to help us, we think, serve more families and serve them even better.
I think I got this right. You said 50 years. You're 50 years in. We're looking at 260 chapters, 62 countries, thousands of programs. 250,000 volunteers. The tail of the tape is pretty solid. When you think about the plan and you think about what the next, we're not going to do the next 50 years. Let's say the next 2 years. I mean, one, how much time are you spending on an airplane? Two, okay, if we do this interview 2 years from now, what are you hoping to say? You know what? In the last 2 years, we've done X.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so number one, on your first question, I try to be pretty judicious about the time I travel, in part because, I'm a member of a team and I've got a team of people who go out and work closely with our local organizations around the world. So we try to be really judicious with our donor dollars, right? About how often I need to be out there, our chief operating officer, others. So we're really targeted and strategic about when I go. I like to go I just came back from Italy and the United Kingdom, where I had an opportunity to really help those organizations cultivate relationships with critical hospital partners, with critical multinational donor corporations, some of the McDonald's business, those government entities in Italy, they're passing a law now on family-centered care. So it's where I can be of greatest use to advance the mission. So there's that. I think in 2 years, part of what's beautiful about our organization's history, it's two sides of a coin, Ryan. So what's beautiful about it is it started very organically. Like I can tell you the origin story quickly. I won't do that this moment. You can ask me to follow up if you want, but it's nothing anyone planned. It literally was the brainchild of Audrey Evans, who's known as the mother of neuroblastoma, who is really credited with reducing the mortality rate for that form of brain cancer in children by 50% through her research and her work. So she had this vision, and McDonald's kind of got involved along with, at the time, Philadelphia Eagles and others. So the reason I say that is that the mission grew organically and without a strategic roadmap, right? It's not like anyone was in a boardroom thinking, oh, well, this is how we're going to create a global charity and where we should go and why we should go. It was like people raising their hand all around the world saying, this is a need in our community too. We want to do something to help families. So when I came into the organization, what we had was this incredible, map of people doing great work, but we weren't really looking 10 years ahead to say, where will the need be for families whose children are getting specialized pediatric care? And no one had really done that work. So that's part of what we're doing now. And what I would say to you is we've identified, for instance, pediatric magnet hospitals around the world, where over the next 10 years, certainly over the next 5 years, more and more families will need the services of Ronald McDonald House. And what we've done now is identified those so we can really dig in and strategically build partnerships to go from where we think we are today, which is meeting about 35% of global demand for our work, to hopefully within the next 5 years, get up and over 60% of meeting global demand.
Let's talk about your origin story.
Okay.
By the way, this is a historical moment on the Courageous podcast, right? This is the first time we've ever had a sibling.
Yeah.
Right. We had Steve Fitzgerald on a few months back, which is how we connected Katie. But I'll tell you the thing that's been most mind-boggling about getting to know both of you is that you went to Michigan. Like, how does that sit in the family?
We don't like to talk about that a whole lot, right?
This is the Courageous podcast. We have to talk about this.
Right.
If you need to channel whatever you need to say to the family through me in the podcast, right? Because Steve obviously is Michigan State. I know Dad, right? Dad taught at Michigan State. So, maybe we can go back to, and this is, I will attempt to disarm by, look, I do think in some ways we're all little boys and girls trapped in these adult bodies, and we're doing the best we can here, right? We're doing the best we can here. So, like, if you look at Katie Fitzgerald, who comes from Michigan State land and ends at Michigan, and we don't need to do that, but like, walk me through the space. how did this space, I mean, you've committed 25 years, maybe even more to the space. How did you know, when did you know that you wanted to go that path?
So it's a great question. And I will, I listened to the podcast you did with Steve, which was great and so fun to listen to. I would say much like him, it happened pretty naturally for me. So, growing up, if I go really far back, I would say growing up in the environment we grew up in, as my brother on your podcast shared, great parents, great family, great childhood. I also was at a very early age, because we grew up in a nice, diverse college town community, and I had friends of different socioeconomic levels and different races and different religions, and our parents really wanted us to have exposure to diversity in that regard. I became pretty aware in my teens and early 20s of what we now call privilege, but we didn't have language for it then, right? And I called it opportunity. I remember, and I actually went to Michigan State for my undergrad, so I am a Spartan.
Okay, fair enough.
So just to keep the record straight. But I remember feeling like, why is it that I, who, went to high school with a bunch of people I went to high school with, some of them ended up in a lot of trouble. Some of them didn't have an opportunity to go to college, and some of the differences were racial, were socioeconomic, were maybe breakdown in family structure and relationships. And I just was really aware of that. And it was probably because our dad was a developmental psychologist and we talked about these issues a lot at home, but our parents were pretty hands off. So I just kind of knew that I was interested in working on whatever it was that lands some people into a sea of opportunity versus some people who don't get into that opportunity. And I wanted to understand it more, and I wanted to be a part of creating more pathways for folks. And so my interests in my undergrad were in political science and public policy and social structures, and then went on to get my master's degree in social work from the University of Michigan.
You're like, easy, Ryan. I hit Michigan State, okay?
Yeah, I do have them picked for the Final Four. I'm just saying.
Defense wins championships.
Hey.
I could see it. I could see it. So as you're going along this path, does anything like knock you off it? Are there any moments where you become frustrated? Or look, when I think about, this might not be the right nonprofit work or, ethos work, I find it doesn't, there's been times where it doesn't move as fast as it should, for all the reasons we know, right?
Yeah.
Did that ever frustrate you along the way? Or does it still frustrate you?
Yeah. So, I guess I was thinking about some of this in anticipation of our conversation, but I got asked this question once. It was when I was interviewing for the President and Chief Operating Officer role at Feeding America. And the question, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was about, tell us about your biggest failure. How do you cope with failure? Sort of along these lines that I hear in your question, which is, how do you manage through some of the frustrations of either the pace of change or the enormity of the problems that the nonprofit sector tries to take on? And my answer, which I was completely unprepared for that question, but it just instinctively, I basically said, listen, if you're not able to handle constant failure, then this is not the work for you. So what I mean by that is the kinds of issues that people grapple with in the nonprofit sector are precisely the kinds of issues that the market either isn't interested in solving or can't solve. And so they're wicked problems of, human behavior, economic inequality, mental health, the list goes on and on and on. So you kind of have to be really resilient about in your lifetime, you're going to make progress, but you're probably not going to solve that problem. So for me, I've just never, I'll be honest, I don't feel frustration about not solving when I worked in food insecurity, about not solving hunger, or in child abuse and neglect, not solving the issues that are underneath that. If you can help some communities, some families move from a place of despair and challenge to a better place, you've helped, I should say, you haven't created anything. You've helped create generational change for people. And that has got to be enough in this human life that we're given from my point of view.
There's a lot in there. There's three things I take away from the comment, and it's sort of odd perspective depending on how you. So there's nothing negative about what I'm about to say. By the way, one, in some ways, it does give you grace, right? Because the bar is the bar, right? Like you said, these are massive problems. And I think if you're on the other side of it, this is the second one. There is a sense of urgency to get things done.
Totally.
Right. But you can like again, back to the sleep at night because you're trying to move the thing forward. But I also really loved your understanding your role in all of this, is that you are going to pass the baton just like the baton was passed to you. Who knows where the race will be at that moment when the baton gets passed to the next. And I imagine in your current role, when this is a global game, right? We're going to move even slower. Does that make it even that more important to have absolute clarity? Even if you know you're not going to crack the code fully, you kind of need clarity to know where we're running, yes?
Totally. And even though, let me just say, even though we may not solve the entirety of a problem, you should still be held accountable for making progress on that problem. And that's where the work is. It's like, so for instance, give you an example from sort of a global perspective. I was in Peru recently, where we have our local organization is doing incredible work. They operate several houses. They have what we call family rooms inside hospitals that support families who really need support while their child is hospitalized or receiving care. In fact, in Peru, they are the only privately run entity that has inside hospital services and space in partnership with public hospitals in Peru. So they're making great progress. They also have almost a 20% what we call treatment abandonment rate in that country. And what that means is that, especially in developing parts of the world, when a family just cannot afford to get to the place where their child can get their life-saving treatment, maybe they can't leave a job. In many economies and parts of the world, there's no such thing as Family Medical Leave Act. There's nothing protecting your job if you have to go and be with your child for weeks or months on end, right? So these families are really faced sometimes with, for those of us in the US, I would say, an unimaginable choice between either I stay home, keep my job, take care of my two other kids, and I'm going to not get that treatment for my kiddo because it's 6 hours away and I can't even afford to stay in that community where my child would be treated. Or I'm going to go and do that and put the entirety of my family at risk and our livelihood. So what's happening is that's what we call treatment abandonment. As an example to sort of your question, is we want to see those rates reduced, right? So we work with our partners, like in Peru, to make sure that we've identified the hospitals where treatment abandonment is likely to happen, where we're building partnerships with hospital systems to make that happen. So over time, we can see that rate reduce, which means more kids' lives are saved, more families are not put into total economic despair because they had the unfortunate bad luck of their child getting gravely ill. Those are the kinds of things that we really pick as our sort of measures of success, even though we're working to solve the problem, in a big picture, longer term down the road.
You remind me of something I wrote a few weeks back, and I'm going to put you on the spot. So let's see how we do here. Okay. When I think about many organizations, we have the concept of a BHAG, which is the big, hairy, audacious goal. But I've interviewed many people on the show where they have found that it almost hasn't been big enough. the BHAG.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yep.
this inspired me to come up with, maybe we need a CHAG. And CHAG is the crazy, hairy, audacious goal. It is like, what is it, right? Like, when is it that the crazy idea it just isn't that crazy. Like, it's not crazy enough. Like, you're not shooting big enough.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to go bigger. And, I think as a guy that loves brand, sometimes things like if BHAG was a brand, it does lose. It's like the dopamine isn't there as much as a CHAG. So to put you on the spot, if you have, what is the BHAG? And then what is like, I know I almost can't even say it this way, but like the off the record, on the record, like actually
CHAG.
The CHAG would be this.
Yeah. I mean, I got that answer easy for you because our BHAG right now is double the number of families we serve around the world. So in our houses and family rooms in particular. So we know, though, the range of programs that our organizations offer in the 62 countries where we operate served about 2.7 million families last year, but only about a little over 600,000 of them were in the houses and the family rooms. And those are the two most important, what we call core programs that really are the difference makers in a child being able to access life-saving treatment in a family, not sort of suffering all of the ill effects of having to get that care. So we want to double that number. Like I said, we want to go from 35% of global demand in those two programs, which is what we think we're meeting. And we have that broken down by regional geography to over 60%. So that's a big lift for us. It's a big lift for our system. We have a lot of work to do in that space, but that's a really important goal. But it's not the CHAG, right? Like the CHAG is any family anywhere in this world who cannot get the care for their child because they have barriers of distance, financial inability to access the care, that those should not be barriers for a child getting life-saving treatment and care, period. So that's for sure our North Star. That's where we want to go. And because we're in 62 countries with 62 different, health systems that operate all differently, from completely private to public health systems, and completely different economies and completely different cultures of philanthropy, right? Like that's a whole other part of this, that it's going to take us some time to get there.
Like what, like 2 months?
Well, that's the CHAG, right? So that's the transformation. And that may never, this is something that I find this might be a little courageous to say, because I find in the nonprofit sector, like we have to have North Stars and we have to have the CHAGs. But sometimes I think colleagues of mine I've seen over time aren't willing to admit that it may never be realized. And I don't think that's something scary to not admit, because I think humans are inherently fallible. We're not perfect creatures. We have all kinds of vices that get in the way of us being able to ensure certain aspects of what we would really idealize in a perfect state. So it doesn't bother me to say we may not achieve the CHAG in the work I do, right? But that's why those BHAGs are really important, because we got to show progress.
Yeah, to me, it feels like context. I will say, there's a conference I spoke at, maybe 6 months ago, that was called The Shift, all nonprofit sectors that I should introduce you to with all your free time.
Yeah, I love it.
If you happen to be in DC, good group. And I remember thinking about how exhausted this group was. And it wasn't, everyone is taking their axe to work, and there is a fight for the cause. There is a fight for donations. The work is exhausting. It is tiring work. If you were going to address the vertical as a whole, what courageous feedback do you have for the industry, for the vertical?
Oh, well, I think it's something in what I just talked about. And I've been thinking a lot about this because I was at Feeding America during the pandemic. I actually was 8 weeks on the job when the pandemic began. And of course, within a matter of days, really, we saw the food supply chain completely seize up, as everyone listening probably can remember, and food insecurity levels hitting historic highs not seen, since the Great Depression in the United States because of all of the chaos that was happening at the time. So I say that to say, I think part of the challenge that I see overall in the nonprofit sector is sort of what we talked about, which is our discomfort with owning that we can have North Star visions of what we're trying to achieve, but actually have realistic plans to make progress in that direction. So sometimes I see organizations, paint a beautiful CHAG, to your point, but fall short perhaps of really being able to architect and engineer thoughtful, strategic pathways to make measurable progress on that CHAG. And maybe it's just owning the fact that we may never realize the CHAG, but that doesn't mean that our work isn't valuable. And I will say for the donor community, that's the other truth telling that I would say is, in those early days in the pandemic, we had everybody so altruistic, in some ways, so well-intentioned, but just sort of thought, well, we just need an app to solve hunger. Like these very, in my view, somewhat simplistic, notions of a silver bullet solution to complex human conditions. And I think that's the other truth telling we have to get more comfortable with in the nonprofit space is, folks, it is really hard and it is super complex. And if you want to be a part of it, be a part of the journey and hold organizations accountable for making progress in that journey, but don't have unrealistic notions of solving homelessness, solving hunger, solving this like overnight. If we could have solved it as humanity, we would have solved it millenniums ago. Right?
This feels like a lesson in leadership. When I think about why we exist at Courageous, and if you remember from our last little prep chat, I talked about the 3 levers that are needed for courage. There's knowledge, there's faith, and there's action. And if you lose one of them, it's something else. The longer we've done this, the more though, and this is going somewhere, the more I realize, oh, that's interesting. The knowledge that we provide is often the outside perspective that people are afraid, or they're just stuck in the vortex of the day job and have no context to what else is going on in the world. So there's outside perspective that we think we're providing. The faith is the inspiration to keep going, which I don't feel like is really a deficiency in your world, but curious to hear your take. If you get too beaten down that you forget that. And then if that's the knowledge and the faith, the action component for us is the accountability partner to remind our partners, hey, you said this was important. Why aren't we? What happened? And I think the way you described underneath the CHAG, I'll just call them, there are checkpoints that need to be established along the way. Like, let's just have, not that we've hit a marker, but what's the checkpoint to discuss how close we are to that marker? So when you think about those 3 levers, knowledge, faith, and action, or outside perspective, inspiration, and accountability, where do you think the industry is the best at, and where do you think they need the most work?
Yeah. First of all, I love your framework. I've already told my team about it. So I want to definitely spend more time with our team on it, because I think it's so helpful to think about where we are as a team, where we are as an organization. And then to your question now, where is sort of the industry, which of course is a very gross generalization. But if I were to say where I think the nonprofit sector errs on, it's really the knowledge and faith with not enough action at times, but the knowledge and action playing it too safe. You know what I mean? So I don't think the nonprofit sector is inherently reckless. I think that's the least of because I think we have a lot of smart, deeply committed people who, to your point, who've chosen this profession because they really care. So that caring sort of drives people toward wanting to have a good knowledge base for what they're doing. And they have a lot of faith. It's the action part that's just a little hard sometimes. So I'll tell you a quick story. As we launched this, doubling the number of families we serve, we have a few other BHAGs that go alongside that, but that's the big one. We knew we had an opportunity with our 50th anniversary to galvanize our immediate donor community and to get them rallied behind this goal. And I, was relatively new in the organization, had just hired a new chief development officer. We had a great team of fundraising professionals, but their aspirations, I would say, were not as ambitious as we needed them to be, right? And so we sort of challenged the team to say, for this critical event we need to raise $50 million to kind of just be a seed statement, not just be, it's important money, important investment, but to seed this new bold ambition and to galvanize our community of stakeholders to really begin this journey with us. And it was like, but we had 4 months to raise it, right? Like, so not a lot of time, not a lot of, we had some prospects, but it was pretty low and needed to be done quick. So that action part was super uncomfortable for our team. And we had some knowledge. To your model, it wasn't perfect, but we had it. We certainly had faith, but we needed action. And we ended up raising over $76 million in that 4-month period. And I think that just sort of, it was this injection of like, it doubled the faith. Like the team was like, oh, we can do it if we're ambitious enough, because what is the worst thing that could happen? Right. And that's what I tell the team all the time. The worst thing that happen is we put forward a bold ambition that we have knowledge around and we have faith around, and we come up short, but we'll keep trying. And the reality is, in my experience, there's a great story that I have that I tell our teams all the time, which is to get a $50 million gift, you have to have the $50 million idea, right? So in my experience, donors who are in a position to invest serious money into missions they care about are looking for the leadership and the bold ideas and the plans that they feel they can have faith in, that meet a knowledge threshold, but demonstrate action.
First of all, clearly a good leader. So this is a cap tip to you. I know maybe you will or won't take credit for it, but it's on the other side. I mean, a lot of times we're being brought in. It's almost ironic to say this, but like, I'm trying to make it as safe as possible for people to be courageous. Like, how do we, the story you just shared, it's like the most uncourageous setup. Like, this is right to go be courageous. Mm-hmm. And it is psychological safety. It is what's the worst that could happen, or what's the best that could happen, as Michelle Poehler, who's been on the show, has said before. When you think about your job as a leader, how often is it about creating safe spaces to go for the courageous CHAG? Yeah.
I mean, I think it's the only job we have as leaders, to be honest, right? Like, not the only job, but it's foundational. Like, our teams have to have psychological safety. Now, that doesn't mean lack accountability, right? And that doesn't mean you don't have critical conversations, but people have to feel like they're in a safe place to go for it, right? And to go for it when they can't predict the outcome fully. And if they're afraid, I mean, right, you write books about this, like, you know more about this than I do, but like, if people are afraid to take a chance because their boss is going to come down on them and punish them, they're not going to take a chance. Like, it's simple. It's really pretty basic. It's continuous coaching. It's continuous development. It's all about creating an environment where people can go out and really try things and do things and know that they will be held accountable, but in a continuous improvement context, right? Now, obviously, if people are doing, malicious things and negative things, or like simply not trying. Those are different kinds of conversations, but we're talking about the kind of employees who really want the brass ring. Like they want to go for it and do it. And they need to feel like they're going to have the support of their leadership behind them to do that.
When you go to let's say you're invited to like a CEO conference, it's one of those fancy lunches places, you know the ones I'm talking about. I'm curious. I have an inkling on this, but let's go straight to the source. What percent male, female? Can you give me a little bit of what, when you go to those lunches, what the percentages are?
Well, I mean, for sure in the for-profit world, gosh, I mean, my guess is you go into a room like that and, you're probably 80% male, 20% female at this point. You probably are more familiar with the statistics in the for-profit industry. Certainly in the nonprofit industry where I operate, you have a higher percentage of women leaders in positions of leadership, just I think because of the pipeline of sort of practice and background that we bring into it. But even so, once you get into the upper echelon of nonprofit organizations, you start to see, I think, a higher proportionally not representative representation of women in those positions. So it's still a challenge for women for sure in leadership.
Is there any part of your mission that's like, seems off to me? Like you've got your main CAG, you got plenty of work to do, but is there other, and again, we haven't had this chat, so we're here we are having it, right? So is that part of your, hey, if life would have been just like a little bit easier for you on the way up, or I don't know what your mentorship situation was. I'm curious.
So, part of this is, I mean, one of the things I would say, let me just tell a story because this might be the best way to share this. So I was in a meeting once, which was about an equal mix of men and women in a leadership meeting. And there was like a U-shaped table, right? And the leader of this team happened to be a man. And we all went in the room and all the men gravitated to the head of the table. And literally all the women sat on the two edges of the U of the table. It was unconscious. It was not like seats were not assigned. It just sort of happened. And what was so interesting is during the break, the women all went to the restroom and everybody noticed it. All the women were like, oh, we someone's got to sit at the head of that table. There was like the chatter in the room. Yeah. So the next morning we decided that we would come in and a few of us at least would plop our fannies down at the head of that table, right? And so we did. And what was interesting about this, Ryan, is the men in the group, it later in the debrief of the meeting, we shared about it. And they were like horrified, first of all, because these guys were not the kind of guys who were trying to kind of demonstrate, male domination in the room or anything. It just sort of happened. These dynamics are sometimes very unconscious to all of us. And they really appreciated the fact that a few of the women kind of made sure that we were more inclusively represented in this meeting, in this discussion. So, but later, like a week or so later, a young woman on the team who happened to be just visiting the team at the time, the leadership team, came up to me in the hallway and said, I will never forget that you and this other woman sat there and just very diplomatically helped it be like a teachable moment for the whole team. And I think that meant more to me because that woman was like, I'm going to carry that forward. So there is something about, again, some of these things are not intentional, right? It's just how human dynamics work. And when we apply intentionality to it as women and as men, right, to make sure that we're creating like an inclusive leadership table, it just is better for everybody.
I love that story.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I love that story. I was like, oh, wait, did all the women get there like 20 minutes before to sit at the head of the table? And then you could totally see how that thing rolls out. When you think about your leadership style today, and here's where this is going. I know we're kind of coming to the end here, but you know, I I'm can't imagine what it's like to you've got a board,
Yep.
you have a team, and then you've got an organization. So there's managing up, for lack of a better term.
Yep.
There's managing somewhat across, we'll say, with your, do you call it an ELT?
Yeah. Yeah. For our senior leadership team, SLT. Yep.
How
And
big
then
is
our
that?
extended leadership team. Yep. The ELT. Yep.
All right, so how big is your SLT?
My SLT is only 4 people now. It's pretty
Okay.
small. And then I think we have like about 10 on our ELT.
You and 3 or you and 4?
I'm sorry. So a total of 5. Total of
5?
Yeah.
Since, I mean, we've come around the track twice. So of the 5, how many have been there since you started versus newbies?
Actually, only one is one I hired. The other 3 were there before me, 2 of which were pretty new when I joined.
Okay.
So we had an opportunity to, I think, really co-create the new tenor and tone of the team with the 2 that I had. And then we had one longer serving, our CFO, who's extraordinary.
So give me your style up, your style across, and your cadence to the squad.
Yeah. So there's something fairly consistent. I won't say I've always been good at it and I've gotten better at it over time, but it's still something I work on. So for across for the team and even working with deeper in our organizations, it's about listening and holding my tongue, which is hard to do sometimes because I grew up in a household where that was not like the cultural norm. You sort of had to, kind of fight to be heard because we were just a talkative, rowdy bunch.
I gotta ask, are you the oldest or you're the
I'm
younger?
the baby.
You're the baby.
I'm the baby.
2?
Of 3. So
Oh no! You're saying
Yeah.
I have to have another Fitzgerald on the podcast?
yeah, so you got another one. No, so I think probably as the baby, maybe I had to, probably Stephen and my sister Stephanie would say act out more to maybe feel like I had to be heard. So what I've really had to work on is I have a mantra, which is my mantra is ask good questions. And I really try to quiet my voice so that I don't set the group and the team off in a direction that they wouldn't get to or that I might have missed, right? Now, there's still a point in time where you got to know when to step in as a leader and but I still believe fundamentally, though I'm not always good at it, but I believe fundamentally that our job as a leader is to make the team better. And so every meeting, every engagement is an opportunity for people to really come to a point of view. And your job is to kind of coach and help them get there. If I just come in and tell everybody how to do things, like that's, first of all, I won't be right all the time. And right. Secondly, nobody's learning and growing and we're missing good ideas. So there's that. For the board, it is about, I think our board, which is an incredible board, expects us to bring forward our best thinking, right? As any board should. And so we do that. But what we do is we really create then space to listen. So what's really important, we have just from a very practical perspective, and this is probably true of a lot of people listening and governing boards in general, is discuss, don't present, right? So like our board has to work hard on reading material and getting our point of view. And then we come into a room and again, hopefully they're not hearing from me or my leadership team a whole lot. We actually just had a board meeting discussion this morning. They are constructively engaging, criticizing, and helping us move our strategy and our work forward. But in order to do that, they have to be the ones talking, not us.
So what I'm hearing is pre-reads. Tons of pre-reads.
Oh, pre-reads, 100%.
Pre-reads, come to the meeting prepared.
Exactly.
So many companies get this wrong. So many companies. It's like, I feel like okay, this is a Ryan Berman hack. Are you ready?
Okay.
Okay, you permission granted to use this or not, if you like it. So you have to remember for 25 years in the idea space, we were constantly going into rooms, and if you're not careful, it's gladiator, right? It's a subjective idea. So you're going to get a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And I think your whole goal is to shift it to this or that, not yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make it a this or that versus a yes or no? Because if you put yourself in a position where it's gladiator, a thumbs up, yes or no, you're out versus, hey, these are the two paths we're looking at.
Yeah.
Right? How brave, how much do we want to walk the plank? Right? On
Yep.
courageousness.
Yep.
Here's why we feel. Here's your B hag. Okay, we also have a C hag.
Yep.
Are we ready for the C hag? Okay, now it's like, we need your help. Are we turning left at the intersection or right? I think a lot of leaders and companies, they put themselves in a position where it becomes an arena, it becomes gladiator only, and it's like yes or no versus this or that. So, by the way, I should have asked, how big is the board?
25 people.
I mean, how do you, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I don't have any data to support this. I think some nonprofit boards are maybe a bit better because we want to get representation. So we've got global representation. We've got some leaders of our chapter organizations on our board. And because we have this incredible partnership with McDonald's, we have some McDonald's people on the board, but also docs and, hospital CEOs. So it's a mix, but we do a lot of work in committee also. So we have an active board that does work in committee. So when we get into the boardroom, I think with 25 people, if the leadership team isn't like, droning on and on in its presentation, we actually find that most people can engage and participate in the conversation because we've really created space for it. They've done the work in committee, but then they also are ready to really engage in the boardroom. And it's not an hour meeting.
how long is it? Is it an hour discussion? What is it? 30
Our
minutes?
board meetings are usually 2 to 3 hours.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, we meet quarterly. So, but it's rich and substantive. Yeah.
I've so enjoyed this time. A few things that I took away, and if I missed something that you wanted to land with the audience, let me know. But
Okay.
I mean, just where we ended, I mean, ask good questions, discuss, don't present. Those two alone, one, I'm not surprised that you're the baby. At my dinner table, I watched a lot.
Yeah.
And I only had one older brother, but I watched a lot, and I'm like, did these jobs choose us, right? More than I chose my job. I've always been an observationalist because that's what I've been doing since I was 7 years old and can remember listening to, well, I'm air quoting, conversations, sometimes debates at
Right.
at the Berman dinner table. So asking good questions, what I like about that also, Katie, is not just to the people you're working with, but to yourself.
Yeah.
And then
Totally.
discuss, don't present. It's the amount of times I've said, I've never saw myself. Keynote speaking comes with the territory, but
Yeah.
I never saw myself as a keynote speaker. I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm a conversational speaker. And
Yeah.
that is the discuss. I want a discussion from the stage. I want to keep it real from the stage. I'm super excited to see what you all do in the next 50, but understanding your role in all this is to just pass the baton and do the best you can. Run your race, run it hard. But at some point you're going to pass that baton. And maybe this is like the final question. I mean, somewhere your brother is skiing. He's just like,
Right.
he's living his best life on a mountain. You've got you have a different type of mountain that you're climbing right now.
Yeah.
But at some point you're going to pass that baton. Have you started thinking about, your next, like, are you going to go head west and ski yourself, or have you thought about it yet, or is it too soon?
I think it's a little early for me. And I mean, he won't like me to say this probably, but I'm 8 years younger than Steve. So I'm sort of not there yet. Right. And I also, I love what I do. And I know he does too. And he's still doing, like, he's still
Yeah.
doing other stuff, work stuff. But for me, it's such a part of what gives my life meaning that it is important. It doesn't feel like work, right? It's wonderful that I can make a living doing it. That's a gift. But for now, I really see myself continuing for a good long time yet. But as soon as it's not, I would say any work that I do in the space, as soon as it becomes something where I don't feel that connection to how I'm part of moving the mission forward, that's when it gets hard, right? And I gratefully haven't really had that experience. Even when I've made changes from an organization to organization, it's always been to go do kind of the next thing that's really calling me. It hasn't really been because I have felt somehow stifled in the work. And so that's just a gift that I feel like I've been given, and I really am grateful for it. And, one last thing I'll just share with you, because we didn't really talk about it, but something you were saying in your closing was about asking questions and listening, and is also just the key for me is trying to be as authentic and vulnerable as I can be. And maybe because I'm a social worker, because I do this work, I think what unlocks a lot of my relationships in my work and with our teams is I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong. I'm willing to be vulnerable about what I'm bringing into a conversation, and I just find that creates kind of a magic superpower with the team, because all of a sudden people get to show up not pretending to be a role, but they get to show up kind of for who they are. And again, you combine that with some psychological safety to try to go do some things. And there's something really powerful about that mix. So totally changed the subject on you there, Ryan, but your comments were, sort of inspiring me.
Well, I feel like again, I got to be careful that we wrap this versus rabbit hole this, but like, I do think because I feel it's funny. We were at an offsite in Seattle last week, and someone was asking, it was almost like shadowing on me, like what about me? Like, why do they stay at Courageous? And one person said, like, Ryan's ability to disarm people. But when I think about what did that really mean, I feel like just like you have your CHAG, BHAG, when you always are in honor of that, it's like, it's not about me.
Right.
It's not like my idea is right or wrong. And by the way, I've gotten this wrong. I mean, I was 25. I was 30. There's been many competitive arenas that I played in where I felt like it was Game of Thrones and I was just trying to survive an organization. So my idea was heard. And so I get that politics are different now because, I'm the top of my organization. But I've always tried to take what I've learned and realize it isn't about me. It's like, if this is where we said we're going, who has the best idea to help us get there? Stay open-minded, stay vulnerable. This is what great leaders do. And you've got a big CHAG in front of you, let alone BHAG. So nice to like connect and jam. I also wanted to make sure that I hope we successfully, audience, that you didn't just meet Katie Fitzgerald, but you met Katie. You got to see a little bit of what it must be like to be the third child at that dinner table growing up in Michigan, near Michigan State. And please keep doing what great work you're doing. Good luck with all the flying
Ryan.
and the miles, and let's stay in touch.
You bet. Thanks so much for the work you do. And I can't wait to share more of it with my team. So thanks, Ryan.
You got it. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Courageous Podcast. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts so more people can find us. See you again next week.